Hey everyone, before we get going today, I just want to stop and say thanks to each and every one of you. I hit a milestone this past week that is pretty fulfilling for me, rewarding. I surpassed 1,000 subscribers on this channel. So just for those who have been watching, or even if you're new, thanks for watching. This channel has been a real joy and fun for me to do for the past just over 2 years. And I don't plan on slowing down. So thanks to each of you. This was a really exciting milestone to hit. So what are we doing today, and what is this new series? So I did some research on what people are looking for and how they find my channel. And a lot of people, it seems, are looking for React and GraphQL videos. So I wanted to create a series where we run through from absolute scratch to a production-ready application, how to build a full-stack app with GraphQL and React. This is going to be a series of videos where we'll kind of take it step by step, incrementally along the way, and build it as we go. So what will we be building? Well, if I'm not watching tech YouTube, you might find me watching finance YouTube. So I had this idea for a finance app that we could build together. This finance app would be prompt driven. So the main interface of this app would be a prompt at the top where you enter in what you want to see. And specifically, this will be a stocks and like stock research finance app. So some examples here, let's say you wanted to get some information on Tesla. Then you could type in the stock ticker for Tesla. Or maybe you're wanting to get the holdings of a particular ETF. Then you could type in the ticker plus holdings. Or maybe you wanted to compare two stocks, even over a particular time period. Then you could type in a list of stocks and give it a time period. Or maybe you wanted to compare their PE ratio. Or maybe you wanted to create a list of stocks and save those and research those later. You know, we've kind of gotten used to this prompt interface as devs in VS Code. If you've used tools like Figma, you've got the Command P there to search through all the various options. So I thought this might be interesting, an interesting app to run through, and it would involve a front end, back end, API calls, all sorts of things along the way. So this is kind of the rough and overall vision for it, but we're going to take it a step at a time. So what technology would be involved in this app? Now, this is not what we're doing just today. This is a lot. This is what's coming in this series. So of course we'll be building this on top of Node.js using the Typescript language. We'll be using Postgres for our database. To communicate between the front end and back end, we'll use GraphQL. And specifically, we'll be using Apollo GraphQL on both the server side and the client side. We'll be using GraphQL Code Generator, which is an awesome tool to take the type system that you're building in GraphQL types and translate those into TypeScript types so that you can make your resolvers and things like that in GraphQL type safe. We'll be wrapping this up in a monorepo to contain our backend and front end. We'll see if we have any packages along the way, but at least our backend and front end in a monorepo. We'll be running our backend and database and Redis if we need it in Docker with Docker Compose. We'll be using PNPM as our package manager. PNPM's a bit more efficient and faster than NPM and Yarn. We'll be using the SWC Rust compiler or JavaScript TypeScript compiler written in Rust to make our builds super fast. We'll be building our front end in React because React is awesome. And actually, think we're going to build this in React Native, or more specifically, Expo. I'm curious about making this into a mobile app potentially, and React Native and Expo runs on the web, iOS, and Android. And so if you're not familiar with React Native, don't worry, it's still React. Just we'll be using Vue components instead of divs, and the styles might be a little bit different, but it'll still be the React you know and love. And then finally, to actually do the finance part, we'll be using the IEX API. And this will allow us to make finance calls and return real-time data into our system. So that's a lot of technology through and through. Of course, we're not going to get to all of that in this one video. So here in this first episode, our goal is to really create a GraphQL API. We're going to just get an Apollo GraphQL server up and running, explore what that means, take a look at the Apollo studio for running queries from our local environment, and just kind of get that started. I would like to go ahead and get pulling in of price data in. Just super simple. Maybe we can make a query and fetch a price from a stock. So we'll start very simple. We're not going to get into monorepo or anything like that yet. We're just going to start with a simple Node app and build up from there. So let's get going. Let's see. Thanks for joining, Muhammad. All right, let's go. Okay, so I kind of breezed over this. So this little F up here, we're going to call this app Finesse. It's kind of like finance, finesse. Okay, so let's start our project. So I'm just in a terminal here, and let's go ahead and we're going to use p and pm. By the way, I'm going to use the LTS version of Node. So as of this recording, that's version 18. And let's go ahead and just p and pm. Actually, what is the p and pm init? I want to check this out real fast. Okay, create a package.js file. Great, so let's make a directory, and we're going to call this finesse. And since we're not in a mono repo yet, I'm just going to call this like finesse-be, because this is going to be our backend. So let's go into this directory. We're going to p and pm init in here. So this is going to create a package.json file that just gets us started and going. So let me go ahead and open this up now in VS Code. Great, so we have our package.json. Okay, let's go ahead and create a source file, and we're going to create a TypeScript file. So I'm going to say source/index.ts. By the way, that's a quick and easy way to make directories in VS Code. You can use slashes and it will make all the folders you need along the way. So let's just console log out hello world and see if we can get that up and running. So I think what we could do here is we're going to get into using the SWC compiler and all of that, but I think I want to just get this up and going pretty quickly. So let's use some tools here. So there's a tool called tsnode, which is a nice way to develop in TypeScript and just get going pretty quickly. It allows you to run Node, but using TypeScript files instead of JavaScript files. We won't end up using this in production, but it's a good way to get started. So let's install TypeScript and also tsnode. And also we're going to let's use Nodemon. Nodemon's a good way to watch files locally and restart whenever we make changes. Now we won't use this in Docker, but again, we're going iteratively here. So let's do pnpm install, and I'm just going to make all these dev dependencies for now. Let's do TypeScript tsnode, and Nodemon. Okay, great. So that has added in our dependencies here. Now, let's create a start script. And I believe from the documentation of Nodemon, it will automatically, it will automatically look for a start script in our package.json. So that's pretty cool. So let's create a start script that will run tsnode and our source/index.ts file. Great. Okay. Now let's create a dev script, and this is just going to run Nodemon. Awesome. Okay, so let's just run this and see what happens. See if we forgot anything. Okay, it says it can't find node index.js. Okay, let's maybe be a bit more specific in Nodemon. That's okay. So let's run this exact, let's see. Let's take a look at our Nodemon options. npx, that helps us execute things in Node, Nodemon, and we'll do a -h. And this will give us some interesting options here so we can see what's available. So we could do Nodemon exec, and we'll pass that in. We can watch particular directories. So let's maybe be a bit more specific here. So let's do Nodemon watch, and we'll watch the source folder. And then we will exec, in parentheses, pnpm start. Not parentheses, quote marks. Okay, let's try that out. There we go. So we got an error, but we are up and running here. So by running pnpm start, it started tsnode and started our source index file. Now, we can see here that says cannot find name console. Do you need to change your target library? Why, yes, we do. We haven't quite set up Typescript yet. So I'm going to head on over. I created a blog post on Medium, and I did a video about this about a year ago, about the ultimate Node Docker setup. And in this blog post and in that video, I created this example tsconfig file that you can use when creating TypeScript projects. And it extends from a project that offers a really good baseline config for Node. This one happens to be using Node 16, and we'll change that out for 18 for our purposes here. So let me go ahead and install this tsconfig/node package. So let's do pnpm install, again, -d for dev, and we're going to do tsconfig/node 18. That's the package we want. It says it's missing a peer. We need to go ahead and bring in the types for Node. So let's do that. So pnpm -d types node at, and we want node 18. Great. Okay, let's create a tsconfig.json file over here. We're going to copy in my example from this blog post. And then instead of doing node 16, we'll say do node 18. Okay, so we've added our node types, we've added a base tsconfig. Let's Control-C out of this over here and restart this and see what we're getting. Awesome, so now we're getting hello world. So this is just a very basic TypeScript setup for Node. Again, we're using this development-friendly Nodemon and tsnode, and then we'll iterate on this later to get it closer to what we'll need for a production application. So let's go back to our index file here. And oh, and we can see it's waiting changes for restart. So let's say hello YouTube. And if I save this, will it restart? Okay, it's not restarting yet. So let's fix that before we get there. It might be that I need to do this dot slash. Let me see if that's it real fast. Okay, so it says hello YouTube. Let me say hello Kevin. Okay, so for some reason it's not watching our directory. Let's take a look at those options again and see if we missed something. So npx nodemon -h. Let's see. The watch flag, watch directory path for files, use watch for each directory or file to watch. I would have thought that that would watch. Let's see if we did npx. Let's see. I would have thought that would be watching our source directory. I'm not sure why it's not. -w watch source. Well, we might need to restart this a couple times. Maybe this, I might be missing something obvious here. Maybe this will hit me in a minute. But okay, let's keep on going. So let's set up a basic Apollo GraphQL server. Let me pull up our documentation here. I'm going to head on over to the apollographql.com site and go over to our documentation. And we'll go to the server documentation here and getting started. So right now this is version 4 as of this stream. And we'll follow in through some steps here. So they're going through creating a project. We've already done that. And now we need to install some dependencies. So we'll install Apollo Server and GraphQL. They also have some extra things with Typescript here. We've already installed Typescript and TypesNode, and they even give you some an example tsconfig here, which is nice. Okay, let's install our dependencies. So we'll install Apollo Server and GraphQL. So we'll do pnpm install. These will be regular dependencies, not dev dependencies. So we'll install Apollo Server and GraphQL. Okay, let's see what's next here. So let's go ahead, and they go in on the schema here, but I'm going to work a little bit backwards from what they have in the documentation. And we're going to go ahead and start with the server setup and work backwards from there. So I'm going to copy in this section from create an instance of Apollo server. So let me add some imports here. So we'll import from Apollo server. So we'll import that. We'll need to create type defs and resolvers. So we'll go over what that is. And then this await start standalone server. So that is an import from a kind of a strange location. So I'm going to find that in here. So it's importing from @apollo/server/standalone. Awesome. Now this is using await at the top level of Node. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this in a function. So I'm going to delete some comments here. So const, I'm going to say start server and create a function here that will wrap this, and then we'll run start server at the end. Because we're using await in here, we need to make this an async function. Okay, awesome. So all of our little red squigglies are gone except for these. So let's go over what these are. So in any GraphQL setup, and in particular Apollo, we create what's called typedefs and resolvers. Typedefs are the typed schema that you create for your GraphQL API. And then resolvers are the set of functions that it takes to create the data necessary to return from a particular query. So that's a lot of gobbledygook words. So let's take a look at an example here. There's actually a really good example I noticed on this GraphQL code generator page. URL is a little long, but the-guild.dev/GraphQL/codegen. If you just search GraphQL code generator, you'll find this. We're not going to implement the GraphQL code generator in this episode today. I think that may be my next episode. But this gives you a good example kind of from start to finish of what things look like. So here in over here in the schema, can I zoom into that? No. Over here in the schema, this is what a GraphQL schema looks like. I wish I could zoom into that. I cannot. This is what a GraphQL schema looks like over here. So we are defining, let's take a look at this. So type query. This allows us to define queries that are available in our GraphQL. Pretty much everything in GraphQL runs off queries. So in our React code, we'll end up writing queries specifying what data we're wanting to fetch from the server. So this is saying that there is a me query that would return a user object, a user query that takes arguments of ID to return a particular user, an all users query which returns an array of users, a search query which takes a string argument and returns an array of search results, and then a mychats query which returns an array of chats. All of this is strictly typed, so the client and the server have good expectations of what will and should be returned. GraphQL has enums, it has interfaces, it has unions, so things like search results. It could be different types of things. You could return a user search result or a chat search result or a chat message. You can create unions for that. And then on each type, you can specify which fields are returned on that type. So say, for instance, this me query, which returns me, the current user, it's saying that we'll have an ID there, a username, an email, and a role. And by the way, all these exclamation points mean that it's required. So if there's no exclamation point, it's optional. If there is an exclamation point, then it's required. So let's create a very simple schema. So let's say const typedefs, and we're going to, this is really just going to be a string value, but we can use a special type of string, which gives us some nice code formatting here in VS Code. So this is a template string in JavaScript. So let's do npm install GraphQL-tag. And this package will give us this template string or template literal called GQL. So GraphQL tag. And then we can use backticks to create this multi-line string. So we're going to say type query. This is going to be our root level query. And I'm just going to make a very simple query that is hello and returns a string. And you might guess we're going to plan on returning world. So that's the simplest type def that we can make there. So now let's make resolvers. So resolvers is really just an object of functions. It's actually a nested object of functions. So the first key we're going to make is for query. So this is our query type. And on query, we have this hello field. So we'll make a key for that. And then this is going to be a function that returns some sort of string. So let's say world, if I can spell world. So we'll save that. For some reason, I can't figure out Nodemon watching right now, so we'll manually restart this server. And we can see now that we have server ready at localhost 4000. What comes with Apollo GraphQL is this really great interface that you can use to query your server. I was testing this out before, so I had that in there, I guess. Let me pull this into another window real fast. Okay, so this is going to give us an interface to run queries against our server. So this is called the Apollo Studio or Studio Sandbox or something like that. So all queries start with curly braces, and we're going to just query the hello field on our root level query. Now we can see because everything's typed, we have nice auto completion types. We can even write comments and documentation in our schema so that we can make this a very nice interface for anyone who's consuming this API. So I can run this simple query and we can see what returns here. So the response has a data key and it's returning an object, hello being the key and world being our string value. So that's the simplest possible query really that we could create there. So that's pretty nice. Now this is a good point, now that I have this set up, to go ahead and make a commit here. So let me go in here and I'm going to create a .gitignore file because there are several things that I want to ignore in here. I'm going to, when committing to Git. So I want to ignore node modules at a minimum, that's plural. And maybe actually that's all we need to do for now. So let me make a commit here. We're going to initialize a repository. And let's go ahead and add in our things here. So we have gitignore, that looks good. We've started our package.json. That looks good. The pnpm lock file locks our dependencies in place so that anytime we reinstall dependencies or deploy this out to a server, we know that we are deploying the exact same versions of things. We've added a baseline tsconfig.json file. Again, we took that template from my Medium post. I'll link that in the description. And then finally, we created that index file from the very basic hello world of Apollo server. So that looks good there. So I'm going to commit this and just say Apollo server setup and commit. So I think that's probably a good place to stop for this first episode. Just a very basic Apollo server setup. And the next couple of episodes will then use the IEX API to pull finance data so we can return it in our GraphQL API. And we'll also check out this Apollo GraphQL code generator so we can be using type-safe types, TypeScript-friendly types when creating our resolvers so we know that we are taking in the right arguments and returning the right type of values. So thanks for tuning in today, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good one.